All right, excited to have my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. He is a hobby veteran. Should have had him on sooner, but better late than never. Has a very popular YouTube channel, and we have some similarities we're going to talk about. But Chris Sewall, aka the baseball card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on, man. Oh, yeah, you're right. We should have done it earlier.
All right. So, I know you've talked about it on your program, but for those that, don't know or didn't hear, kind of talk about how you entered the hobby. Like, where did it all start for you?
So I go all the way back to the late 80s. I bought a pack of cards then and fell in love with the hobby right away. I was all in throughout the 90s, crazy collector, full time. All I did was collect cards in my spare time. All my friends did as well. And then sort of over time, they started dropping off. I worked at a card store for 3 years in the late 90s, and then sort of did other things for maybe 10 years or so. And then around 2010-ish or so, I kind of got back in and became a full-time dealer. And I've been basically a full-time dealer since then. So for a little over a decade now. And I started my channel in 2020.
Yeah, and it's funny. We have similar trajectories. I'm older, so it's almost the same story, just 10 years sooner.
Okay.
For me.
What was your first pack?
79 Topps baseball. Yeah. At 7 years old. Pulled a Reggie. I'm a New York City kid. Thurman Munson was my guy. By that time, he was already gone.
Yeah.
But Reggie was a toast in New York City, Mr. October.
Yeah.
And it was that card that really I just said, hey, I'm going to collect these and get as many as I could. It started there. Like you, I started working in the card store around the age of 12
nice.
For about 2 to 3 years. It was supposed to be, Chris, hey, John, you're here so much. Why don't you just work here type of deal? And the owner of the store named Rudy, he's like, I'll pay you half cash and half store credit. It wound up might as well just being the whole thing went back to the store. So I didn't really keep the cash. And I did that for a few years. And then through that, built up a pretty good collection for a young teenage kid. And all my friends like you, I have friends who collected. And they're like, John, you have the best collection out of us. And you're getting the knowledge from working in the store. And I was working the show circuit with the store owner, like helping him at the store, at the shows. But I was basically just making Munster boxes. Just like he hated making Munster boxes. Uh-huh. So I just rifled those off like quickly. And he loved it. And, when I remember one of my friends, like, all you do is make a Munster boxes. You could be selling your own stuff, your collection, And so they were like, you should do shows yourself. And I'm a loyal guy. So at first I really resisted for like a whole year, and then finally, I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And, my dad helped me get a tax number. And I remember telling Rudy what I was thinking about doing. He wasn't real excited about that. Because he knew he was going to lose me. I wasn't doing it to be mean. It was just I wanted to try it myself. And for a year, he gave me like dirty looks and not nice stares. And then after that, he came up to me and apologized. Hey, man, good for you, and I'm proud of you. And and I gave him a little, I gave him credit too. Like I wouldn't probably been able to do without you either, Rudy. So I'm not mad. I didn't leave on bad terms and. So we sort of buried the hatchet. And that was at 15 in 87. And so I've been doing shows in since 87. And then had a store from 92 to 97 with a partner. So 6 years there. eBay came along. And then I realized I can make a sale when I'm sleeping,
Yeah.
and you know, and so I kind of got out of the store because I was still young, 97, 25. I was telling my friends no to a lot of things. Hey, can you go to this? We're road trip, and so finally I can still do cards, have more free time. I love my store years. I don't I wouldn't change anything, but it was time to kind of move on, which I did, and now, as you know, and everyone else knows, that the world with social media and all the different platforms, it's the hobby's while it's a worldwide hobby, it's a smaller hobby too, with with social media and selling platforms, and so that's kind of similar trajectory. So I share a lot of those traits, and I get it because I think we have similar stories. Going off your name, with collector, investor, dealer in that order. I wanted to kind of talk about that too.
Yeah.
Not with me, and I'm sure you've probably had these discussions, if you will. There are certain people in the hobby who don't believe in the I word, right? Investment, like cards can't be an investment. I'm not one of those folks.
Okay.
You won't get in any argument with me. My stance, before I ask you yours, my stance has always been anything can be an investment. It's whether it's a good one or a bad one is what needs to be determined. We have a gentleman here in Syracuse that's a multi-millionaire, and it's on metal and trash recycling. So it's
Sure.
trash really, and he's made himself a millionaire. So that's a pretty good investment. Um, and we've seen what cards are doing. There's still, even though things have settled down, records are still being set, and 6, 7, or higher figures. Things are going for. So I won't argue with that. Well, I'll argue with anyone that says cards are not investment. Now you don't have to do it for that reason. That I won't argue, but you can't. No one, to me, I don't think you can make the argument that they're not. People try. I don't know. Do you get with using that sort of as your title of your content? Do you get a lot of like kickback, or do you get people like, "Hey, I love you, but by the way, cards are not an investment, Chris"? Do you get much of that, or not? Not necessarily.
No, not really. I mean, I don't think the investment part is a very big piece of the collecting, investing, and dealing. I think it's the smallest piece by far. I think investing in cards is very hard. It's not like you just pick a player and buy all his cards. It's way more to it. Very, 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 very few cards are good investments, and I mean like 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% or whatever. And you really have to kind of know what you're doing. And so I would not really sort of recommend people get into the business of investing in sports cards unless they're very knowledgeable about the hobby. But it is fun to buy something and see it go up in value. I mean, that's definitely part of the fun as a collector or as a dealer. And yeah, so that sort of falls into the investing category. So I don't view investing as like a big chunk. I view it as just sort of a fun little side piece to the other pieces of the hobby. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. I guess my question too is, if someone wants to argue like there's no way cards are an investment. They're pieces of cardboard that are just for trading or personal enjoyment. They're not stocks and bonds or real estate or precious metals. You know, what's kind of your response to that if you pose with something like
Yeah,
that?
well, the two responses. One is historic data shows otherwise. There's lots of cards that not just over the last year, over the last 50 years have been great investments if you had invested at them at any point, and they've gone up in value. And again, it's a very, very small percentage, but if you are able to identify those, history has shown they can prove to be great investments. There's clear data on that. You can't really argue that. Um, and I would also say I consider cards very similar to like the art world. Um, a lot of people would say a really important painting is a great investment, and I would agree. If I don't know the painting world, I wouldn't be able to go out and buy a great painting and be like, I should target this painting to invest in because I don't know the market. but there certainly are painter, expert art fans who are experts and they know what to invest in, and that has proven to be a great investment over the course of hundreds of years. And I think cards are the same, just they've been around. They haven't been around as long as art. So that's how I view, the top of the top cards. They're in the same category as famous art or famous historical artifacts or famous pieces of history or whatever. Yeah. So that's how I view it with that.
Yeah, and I agree, and I'm a believer that anything can be investment. Some are better than others. Some are very risky. I mean, everything is risky if you're not informed or do some research,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so that's always my response. But I don't want to say it bugs me. I don't lose sleep over it. But when someone says like cards are not an investment, I usually don't go down that rabbit hole, Chris.
Yeah.
But I sometimes am tempted, like because I can make the argument, much like you did, that they are. Now, you don't have to, do it for that reason. And most people, I think, don't at the
No.
end of
Right.
the
Right.
day.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think as humans, it's in our nature, like, hey, what's this worth? I remember about what I paid for it. Where am I at now in relation to what I got into it? You open something new, or you open any pack, and you pull something, right? What's one of the first things you might hear is, right, hey, what's this worth?
What's worth? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I love people who say, oh, I don't care if everything I own was 0 cents. I don't do it for that reason. That's great. And I'm not saying I don't believe them, but those very same people, when they pull something or get something, they're like, oh, it's worth this. So, and I don't think they have to feel bad for that. I think that's just human nature. We're curious, or how did I do? Or was it, I bought the box for that. How did I make out overall at the end of opening everything up? So,
Yeah. And
so yeah, go ahead.
there's a million different ways to collect or enjoy the hobby. Some people truly don't care, and that's cool. Some people do, and my sense is a lot of people do on some level. Maybe it's not the driving factor. Maybe it's just a small piece or a big piece or a minor piece. But my sense is a lot of people care about that on some level, and hey, that's cool. I mean, everyone can enjoy the hobby however they want, and I think the majority of people do care on some level regarding what a card's worth. Will it go up in value? Those sort of things.
Yeah, no doubt. We're waving the same pennant there. You kind of segued into something I wanted to talk about. You mentioned the art world. I know the cards are sort of paralleled with that. Sometimes the stock market, when it comes into one of the latest, and it's not latest. It's been around a while, but it's become sort of a hot button discussion, right? With card cleaning and alteration, from using a solvent on a card to get a stain or wax off, or a nick if it's a chromium card, a surface scratch, rolling out a vintage card to eliminate a crease, but in the process making the card stock thinner. I'm old school, Chris. I can only speak for myself. I don't believe in, the closest I'll get is a microfiber cloth and saliva, and even that I tend to shy away from.
Yeah.
But if it can't come off with something you use on your eyeglasses, then it is what it is, and you just you roll with it. But people have compared, where I'm drawing the art comparison is hearing other people say, "Hey, we restore art, find pieces of art to as close to original condition, and hang them up in a museum or in someone's personal collection on their wall in their house. Why can't we do that with cards?" And I just, while there may be some similarities between those two worlds, I don't connect that to, as far as rolling out a crease, using a chemical, or things like that. What's kind of your take on altering or trying to enhance a condition of a card through I'll call it artificial means, if you will.
Yeah, sure. So I would sort of break it up into two categories. There's like my personal feelings about what I do. I'm very old school like you. I might even be more extreme. I don't, my view has always been you can't do anything except use your finger. So if you can like scratch, if there's something like on the card, you can scratch it. That's fine. Or if like a corner's folded over, you can. That's it. But if you have to use any outside substance, I don't do it, and I've never have. That's how I was taught, and that's how I've always operated. And I don't like the gray area. I just try to stay out of that gray area. So to me, that's all I ever would do to a card, and that's how I handle cards. In terms of the big picture of the hobby, I get that things are changing, and the times are changing, and maybe the hobby's evolving. And it's true that in other similar industries like comic books and art, you are allowed to restore things, and it's not frowned upon. And in fact, it's encouraged, because people would say, well, I'd rather have that painting look nice than be damaged. And so I get that that's evolving, and that may be where the hobby's going. And if that's where it is, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to be resisting to the change. But for me personally, I'm old school like you.
Yeah, I just was raised sort of like that. I don't know. It's just instilled. It's just my personal take. Even someone says, "Well, what?" Like you pointed out, kind of even with comic books. I'm just like, I don't know. And even some of these chemicals, Chris. Um, I read somewhere someone did a test on some of these cleaning kits, and it was nothing more than either propylene alcohol or glycol, and they're charging $40 for $2 bottle of alcohol. I don't care that it's America, right? Capitalism at its finest. But we've seen some of these cards, right? Especially on the chromium sides, the finest and the Bowman's best. Over years, they naturally turn green
Yep. Yeah.
just with just the chemicals used in the production process, not anything added after the fact, but in producing them. And some of these chemical cleaning kits, while may do the trick in the immediate, we don't, 10, 20, 30 years down the line, we don't know what some of these chemicals will actually do. So it might clean the card gets sent to grading, gets a 10, and in 10 years, it's all sorts of psychedelic colors from the chemicals, right?
Yeah.
We don't know yet. I know I'm putting the cart in front of the horse here, but we've seen some of these chromium and kind of cards naturally fade or turn a certain color based on the chemicals used in the process. So this could potentially happen, and then you have maybe a card that's graded a 10. It definitely doesn't look like a 10. So that's the risk I guess a lot of people are willing to take. These cleaning kits are reportedly doing well on the sales front. But when you see these cleaning kits, is that something like you're like, hey, to each their own, or you're like, I don't really like those?
Um, so I mean, I don't know anything about the chemicals. I don't know the science, but I mean, I imagine we should get some scientists together and have them tell us what's going to happen, because there should be data on that, right? I don't know, but so I have no idea if that's like a real concern. I imagine it is, but I don't know. The kits themselves, I mean, yeah, I would never touch one of them, but I don't. I am sort of a to each their own mentality in general. And if the hobby sort of views it okay and people are okay with it, I don't have a problem with people using them.
Yeah, I guess I'm similar. I just kind of would be like with the caveat, right? Buyer beware. Be careful
Yeah, yeah,
what you use down the line.
yeah, yeah. I do like that in like the art world, and I think in comic book world too. If something's restored, it's listed as restored. That actually would solve all the problems, right? If you cleaned a card and then it got graded, but it said on the case like this has been cleaned. I don't know how you could possibly monitor that, but that would be a solution somehow that would kind of solve everybody's problem, because some people don't care that it's cleaned and some people do, and then that would
Yeah.
just sort of take care of that problem. But I don't know if that's possible.
Well, there is. I'm a big like First 48 fan, Forensic Files. I like all those like detective type shows. First 48 being a homicide
Yeah,
detective show. When they show after a crime scene, right? They bring in luminol and they spray it, and you can see like where blood has been tried to be cleaned up, or where there's been an excess of bleach used to try to clean up a scene. So between like blue lights and LED and black lights, I'm sure if the graded card companies eventually really want to like to monitor that or note that or be that part of the,
Yeah.
they could they could do it. I'm not saying they will or they won't, but that technology exists. I mean, if we can find a blood stain in a crime scene, we can find a cleaning agent on a card. It's really up to the grading company
That's
if
interesting.
they,
Yeah.
if they want to put the time in. And if they did do that, how would that even change that? Would that lessen the sales of those products, or like you said, will people be accepting of it? Like, hey, I don't mind that the card was clean. It's better looking now. you know. And when we talk about values, right? How does that affect? Will someone say, I rather buy that in a 9, not with any artificial elements added to it, or hey, I'm comfortable with a 10 with the
When it's been cleaned.
qualifier of cleaned or enhanced. You know what
Yeah.
I
No,
mean? So
that would be a really interesting to see how that would play out.
yeah, and for the no matter what era of the cards, and we've lived through a few different ones, there's always some topic of discussion or debate where you tend to have to pick a side, or what side of the aisle kind of do you fall on. So maybe that'll be down the line. We'll have to pick a stance there. I tend to believe I'll probably be like, I don't really want the card clean. But you know what? You get older. Uh, Hopefully, sometimes wiser. Not always the case. Maybe I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind on things, Chris. I've talked about it on the show. When grading first came out, I was not a grading fan and kind of against it. And here we are these years later. I've obviously done a 180. So that's the beauty, right? Is we can change our opinion and our minds. Going back to
Well,
your name.
let me just jump
Yeah,
on
go
that.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had the same experience in the late '90s when I worked at the card store. Grading was kind of showing up a little bit. I thought it was the dumbest thing I had ever seen. Um, I just thought it was just a ridiculous waste of time, waste of space, and you can't feel the card. I like
Yeah,
floating the cards with my
I
finger.
think I think you're. I think we were. I think you're my better looking version and younger version
Yeah.
of me, because that was I. I remember a customer coming into the store, a very good customer, and he was. I'll tell the story. It was a Mariano Rivera, the '92 Bowman, where
Hmm.
he's in like his
Yeah.
Florida clothes,
Yeah.
and he had it graded by Beckett. And he brought it in. It was the first time I seen a graded card in person.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, John, look, I just got this card graded. And I remember the comment. I was like, you're an idiot, man. What did you pay for this? I forgot what he said, 20, $25 at the time, maybe 15, whatever. I said, man, you just threw away. You should have gave me that money. I would have told you what condition
Yeah.
your
Right.
card was in. Like you said, it's funny. I smiled when I was hearing you say that, because I'm like, now the card's in the case. You can't pull it out. It's like it's harder to put in a box now. Like all these, you can't handle it the same way as
Yeah.
all your other cards. It's a money grab. Like it's a huge money grab, and you fell for it. And
Right.
here we are. Here we are. But there's a lot of reasons why, right? For the provenance, there's a lot of ill repute people out there doing bad things between counterfeits and fugazis. So I don't want to say a necessary evil, because I don't think it's an evil, but it's become more necessary as time has went on in the hobby. And that's the beauty, Chris, is we can change our mind, right? It shows that we're evolving as collectors, and can have see we can see things that maybe we didn't see at the time. We can, as time goes on. So
Yeah.
very similar to your stance, and here we are, kind of both did a 180, and we'll see. Now we got AI, which didn't exist 10, 20 years ago, at least in the forms we're seeing it in today's world. So that'll be a debate. I'm still a believer in a human element to looking at. We got robot, AI and robotics in baseball, making some calls, and at the minor league levels, balls and strikes. I still like the human element. I don't mind them kind of working together, but I don't want to see no humans whatsoever have a say in a grade or whatnot. Kind of your thoughts, real quick, and then we'll get off the grading soapbox. What do you think of complete AI in the grading scope, or you're like me, where it's a combination of the human eye and AI? I'm fine with, but not AI only.
Yeah, I'm similar to you. I mean, I want it to be right. So if if AI truly gets it right by itself, I would be fine with that. I would be heavily suspect that that's coming anytime soon. I would guess that's, a long way off. So for the time being, I think you have to have a human being a part of it. I don't think that's possible not to. There is an element of just eye appeal, or, okay, this card, technically is this, but it's a much better grade than that, or a much worse grade than that. So I don't know that AI can do it today, but I want it to be right. So whatever the formula is for it to be right, that's what I would be for. If that is one day all AI, I would be okay with that.
Yeah, I know tag grading. I've never graded with them. I
Yeah,
know they're claiming AI grading. Their case looks great. The slab itself.
yeah,
Um, I don't know if I trust it at this point.
yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion at this point. But um, right now I'm not ready to sort of dive in head first just quite yet. So
What I've seen out of tag, and it's not much. What I've seen out of tag is I'm impressed with, and I do see, I could see the hobby going in that direction. Um, and to be fair, with human grading, there's so much inconsistency that, yeah, I mean, that's one of the problems that AI in theory could clean up, but who knows?
yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting. PSA, as we both know, has that number one spot on lockdown.
Yeah,
It would take a lot, and I think it almost would take them to say, "Hey, here's the route we're going now. We're embracing this.
yeah,
We wanted to make sure it was ready and capable, and that's why we're not the first necessarily to the table with it, but we think it's now a viable way to do things. I think it'll take something like that to happen, and you know, every grading company is using it in some form, in the very least, just to scan the cards as they come in and
right,
identify what
right.
needs to be graded. So it is being used. It's just to what degree, and does it get past that first level, and do they still use it there?
Yeah.
But I'd still, even if AI says, "Hey, this card's flawless and perfect," I'd still want like a human sort of like
To
almost
confirm.
like quality control,
Yeah, yeah.
just to our underwear gets that inspected by Inspector 12 tag in it sometimes. I almost want the human like sign off on something like that,
Yeah.
because listen, computers can, humans can glitch, computers can glitch, probably even more so. So I still like that sort of safety valve in the human element,
Yeah, I think
even
we're
if it goes that way.
I think we're a long way off from not having a human confirming. Yeah,
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 yeah, which is good. I'm good with that.
yeah.
So you mentioned you started your podcast your on YouTube in 2020. Talk about sort of the decision to do that, and you're obviously doing very very well. Kind of the growth of that. You're not a big social media guy, so
No,
you've done this on the organic level. I
yeah,
mean, that kudos to you first off, but
thanks.
talk about kind of the birth of the show and how you built it. Kind of the harder way, if you ask me.
Yeah, so I would I my wife and I moved to Europe in 2019. We moved to the Netherlands, and our plan was to go there for 2 years. But we ended up staying 5 because we liked it so much. While I was there, there's no cards there, so I my original plan was I was going to kind of take 2 years to do something else, not because I needed a break. We're going to Europe, and yeah, I'll try something else for fun. But after a year, I couldn't stay away from cards. Like, I needed to get back into cards. So I couldn't think of anything else to do. So I just started a YouTube channel. My original plan for the channel was to be like a library of info. So I'd do like a video about every set. One video about 52 tops, one video about 53, 54, all the way up. I do one video about every player. These are all of Frank Thomas's cards. These are all of Willie Mays cards. I do, it was just going to be an informational library channel. And that quickly didn't stick because nobody watched those videos that I would make. And I found that people were much more interested in me telling stories about the hobby because I had a lot of experience at that point. So they're much more interested in hearing about stories. They're much more interested in top 10 lists of the highest selling card or PSA reveals, these sort of things. So my channel evolved into that pretty quick. And I have a marketing background, so I have a basic understanding of figuring out what people like and giving them that. And so I kind of ran with that, and yeah, it grew much quicker than I thought. My original plan for it was just to do it until we came back, because I don't have any desire to be a YouTuber. It's not my dream at all. I would I'm just doing it because it benefits my real dream, which is to play with sports cards all day long, and it helps that a lot. So that's why I continue to do it. But yeah, it was yeah, it did so much better than I would have ever thought. I really was just kind of doing it to fill a need to be back in the card community where I wasn't in Europe. So yeah, and I was kind of lucky with the timing. Like I started in March of 2020, so right as the pandemic was sort of right at the perfect time in that sense.
Yeah, and here you are, and built that channel right up. I think I know sometimes we don't like to give ourselves credit, so I'll give you the credit too, Chris, because I think people like people who are genuine. I think that's why people like the storytelling, right? Learning how, and a lot of times the stories are similar. I look at it even in our case.
Yeah,
Like I said, you're just a better looking version of me and younger too. But I think people like those common threads and like, hey, I'm not, I'm in this with a lot of other people. Like it's that community feeling. I think people gravitate to honest people who just are sincere, who speak from the heart. I think you check those boxes. I think that's a major reason why your channel is beloved, and I think that's a testament to you. And like I said, to do that without a lot of, hey, I'm on X, Twitter, Instagram, and to do it just sort of organically and word of mouth in a way. Kudos to you, and you do a great job. And I think people can tell when someone really loves the hobby or someone sort of riding on the hobby's jet wave, if you will. To each their own, as we said earlier. But I think there's a difference between the two, and I think people can sense that. And I think people who are riding on a jet wave and enjoying the ride sort of gravitate to those folks as well. And people who, hey, got opened my first pack. I was 5 years old. And I've collected ever since. I think those folks gravitate to those folks, and nothing wrong with that. I just think that's the natural, order of sometimes how things are. And I think there's more people who got it. I got into cards because I was a sports kid. I mean, I was watching sports at 5 years old, as early as I can remember going to, I was fortunate to grow up in New York City, going to Yankee games and Mets games and that sort of thing. The card, when I realized, like, hey, they make cards of these guys, that's when I got into that.
yeah.
I think people from those eras, that's kind of the reason. And then the later on you get, there might be different versions and there's no right or wrong. I'm just saying, as the times change, and whatnot, that reasons can change. But yeah, so you're sort of an accidental YouTuber, it sounds like.
Definitely.
Yeah. Has it surprised you, like the success of the channel? Has it even surprised you, or not necessarily?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the kind words, and it's a good observation that I think people sort of gravitate towards. Yeah, I think a lot of my viewers are yeah. I opened my first pack when I was 5, and I've been collecting ever since. I think yeah. Um, yes, the channel. I didn't. Yeah, the channel was like totally unexpected that it did that well. Again, it was really just a short term plan. I was going to do it for a year or two until I moved back to the states. I had no plans to do it long term, but that all changed quick when it kind of blew up right at the beginning, pretty early. Like the first maybe 4 months was a really slow grind, and then I don't remember. There was just a couple videos that took off, and then all of a sudden it shot up real quick, and then I was like, oh wow, maybe I should rethink this as more of a bigger like part of my life as opposed to just something I'm doing short term to fill a hole. Um, yeah, so I had no plans to have some big YouTube channel, and it was very surprising. Yeah.
Has the success of the channel changed how you hobby? Like, has it influenced even how you hobby, some of the personal decisions you have to make? And is there pressure now that you have a very popular channel that you self admitted, like, hey, I didn't expect it to blow up like this? Has it put pressure on you? Like, hey, I got to create content, like I got to live up to the billing now, or is that I'm just like, or is it I'm just gonna do what I enjoy, be myself, and if more people like it than not like it, then that's a win.
Yeah, so it's create well, so when I was in Europe, I had all the time in the world. So I would put out 4 to 5. I was putting out about 5 videos a week, and my videos take a lot of research, a lot of editing. Like I put in a lot of time into each video. Um, so it was essentially like a full time job running my channel in Europe. Now I only put out 2 videos a week. Um, and that's just because I want to play with cards instead. But I'm still, I still enjoy putting out 2 videos a week. If I had to put out 5 a week right now, it would start to drain on me, and I would probably start to feel it was more of a job. But at 2 videos a week, it's still very fun. It's definitely changed the way I hobby. First of all, the I'm not a social media person. I'm actually a very private person. I'm very introverted, but and I thought I was going to hate the comments and the community, and having to be involved in a community, like having to, but I actually loved it. Like being, getting comments and starting to get to know people, and I was surprised how much I loved it. Would have thought I would have hated it. I assumed social media was always this toxic, evil place, and I'm sure a lot of it is toxic. But what I mostly experienced was positivity and encouragement, and I really loved that. So that changed that way of thinking for me. And also the channel has really created a lot of just a massive network in terms of where I can buy cards. So a lot of people reach out to me to sell me collections. A lot of people reach out to me, hey, my friend has a collection. A lot of people come up to me at shows and specifically seek me out to sell me cards. And this is the real value to me of the channel, because again, what I want to do is play with cards. So yeah, that has really advanced my card collecting dealing career. So that's the best part of the channel for me.
Yeah, I know you buy collections. I try to.
Yeah,
It's I don't know about you. I think it's been getting a little bit more difficult.
it
Um,
has.
thinking it back, like when you first started the channel to where you are today, and you do a show. Do you think your success from the content hurt you when it comes to maybe acquiring a collection, or you think it aids you, or neither?
I think it generally aids. I don't know. It's kind of like a bit. I don't know. Gives you a general sense of credibility. I mean, there's a lot of dealers in the hobby who are looking to sort of, you know rip you off, or rip somebody off, or lowball you. And so when you're meeting a dealer to sell, if somebody's meeting a dealer to sell them their collection, they often don't know that person very well. So at least I can point to my channel and say, here's who I am. You can at least get to know me a little bit. So I think that helps a lot. Yeah.
Do you
Well,
ever feel maybe someone's like a little intimidated, like this guy knows his stuff? You know what I mean? Sometimes I think even with me, like when I do shows, I have like my retractable banner, like advertising the show. I
Yeah.
think sometimes, not all the cases, and I'm a very approachable guy, so anyone that really knows me knows it's not the case. But if someone doesn't know you or very knows you very little of you, I think sometimes it could be a detriment. They feel like, man, this guy like lives the hobby, which is really not the case for me. But it can be the perception. Um, sometimes I think that can be a detriment. Not that maybe not distrust, but like he's going to use his knowledge as an advantage over me, and I don't even want that to happen when it's not reality, but that's just the perception.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know that that would be. I would say that that's my experience, but it's certainly possible that's happened. But I'm curious why you said it's harder to buy collections now than it used to be. What's that based on?
Well, for me, I now as a dealer and as my setup, I'll have vintage and modern and ultra modern, but my heart's really with vintage,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
And I just think less. I think more people. I don't know how. I'll have you give your opinion. I think more people are going to the vintage side. I think there's a movement. I remember being not. I wasn't set up at this show. I was just a consumer at the show, and I was at a table. A young man. I say young man because I'm old. Probably 19, 20. I
Yeah.
would put him at.
Yeah.
He had like a Zion case and it was all new stuff. And this dealer's table we were at was all vintage stuff. And basically, to make a long story shorter, the young man was asking the vintage guy, "Hey, I'm looking to get completely out of modern, ultra modern, and fully into vintage. Would you be interested?" Now, wound up, the vintage guy says, "Listen, you have nice stuff, but like it won't do me any good. I just don't want to go there. I don't carry that." And I've seen similar circumstances, or have had people message me like, "Hey, I want to get more into the vintage. Any advice, John, or tips? I want to move on from my modern or ultra modern." Heck, I've bought some stuff like that because they just wanted the cash for it to buy vintage. So I think there's when people realize like the presses don't run anymore, that stuff is what it is. A lot of the wax has been opened. There's very little unopened wax
Yeah.
of product, unless every year as some still gets open. I think people are just kind of putting two and two together, and I'm seeing a lot more younger people kind of get into the which I love seeing from a
Yeah.
selfish point of view. I love seeing that, and so now I think there's more competition to acquire vintage, and even I have a box which is like off grade vintage stars and semi star. Even that stuff seems to be less available, or sometimes people want maybe too much for where as a dealer when we crunch our numbers we're like, man, I won't be able to work with that. I want it, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just won't be able to make it work. um I guess I'll throw it to you. Does anything like that ring a bell to you, or you're not running into that necessarily?
No, I definitely am. I when you said that, I found that interesting because that's been my experience, and it's not a bad thing actually. Um, I think a lot. I think that people have way more options to sell than they've ever had. Like you said, there's a lot more competition for buying. There's a lot more people who aren't just pure collectors, but they collect and they deal a little on the side, or so there's a lot of transacting going on, and so people have a lot more options. So yeah, people expect much higher percentages. I mean, a lot of people come up to me at the show and they have nice stuff, but they want 90% of comps, and I'm like, that there's no room. I can't pay that. There's no, I'm
i'm
breaking even.
I'm
Uh,
laughing because I'll actually not the last show I did, the one before the last show I did.
yeah,
A gentleman came up and he had some vintage, and I picked a few. I think I picked like three cards out, and I said I'd be interested in these, and he said, "Well, they comp at like all you add them together, they comp at like $700."
yeah,
And I'm like, "Okay," and I'm like, "Well, what are you looking to get?" And he's like, $700.
Right. Well,
And I had to explain to him, all right, so if I buy him for $700, what am I going to put him in my showcase at? And he really couldn't answer me. The light bulb sort of went on. He realized, like, what did he say? I think he said like 720. You know what I mean? Like he
yeah.
wanted to say, I'm like, now I'm over cops. What do you think the next person who's interested in him is gonna do? They're gonna be like, hey, this is going for this.
Well, you can't
So he didn't.
you can't run a business putting up $700
Yeah.
to make 720.
So to make a long, obviously we did consummate a deal, but that happens maybe not exactly at cops, but like you said, 90%, and then then it becomes, is the juice worth the squeeze? I've sold stuff, I'm sure you have too, Chris, where you buy a few things and you sell something almost what you paid for, but you do that because you do all right on the rest of it, or
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of thing.
sure.
Or I've bought something more or less for the conversation piece it is. Like, this is a pretty cool and unique item. I might have overpaid for it a little bit, but it's going to have people pointing in the showcase, or later somewhere else in the show. They're going to be like, hey, did you see that, Joe DiMaggio tattoo from a carnival in that
Yeah.
guy's case over there? Stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But you can't do it across the boards, obviously, or
Right.
it doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, you run into that. Sometimes I think if you're recognized even as a content creator, I think people think we're like making money and we're rich from that. And
No.
I think we both can attest that's not the case. So sometimes I think that price might go up based on that thought process alone. And like I've had people come to, oh man, you're famous. I'm like, I'm not famous, man. I go to my supermarket. No one recognizes me.
Yeah.
That's fame. When you can't go grocery shopping without someone saying, "Oh, look, it's that guy." That doesn't happen. So maybe I'm recognized hobby wise, but I'm not a celebrity.
Yeah,
And
I have friends who
you go,
refer to me I have friends who refer to me who are not in the hobby, who refer to me as a D minus celebrity, which yeah, that sounds about right.
yeah, but there's people who are of that mindset that think, "Oh man, uh, you know, and maybe I don't want to say take advantage. I don't think that's fair, but maybe try to use that to their advantage, or think we'll pay over comps, or for that reason. And like I said, I've bought stuff if it's for my PC, I
Yeah.
will. I have, like, hey, I'm not even going to sell this. I just want it. What do you got to have? And obviously, you try to get it at the best deal. But there's times I'm like, all right, I'll take it. I just need that for my personal collection.
Yeah, of course, of
And
course. Or
you
like a
know,
card that I'll buy a card to break even on if it's a really cool just a card I wanna own for a little while because it's really cool, or it's really unique, or like you said, it's a conversation piece. Yeah, once in a while, but across the board, you can't. Yeah, there's gotta be some room.
yeah, and I try to do it, in a nice way. Even the gentleman who wanted comps for the cards I had picked out, it didn't end badly. I just said, like, I'm just not gonna be able to make that work. He's like, okay, thanks, and on to the next table. Um, he went.
Yeah,
But we are seeing. I agree with this. I think we're seeing more people get into and more younger people. I know at the last year's national, Chris, I saw a young man, 13 years old, very, again, young to me, 12, 13, 14 years old, and he was at a table. I didn't stick around, so I don't know what the final outcome was, but he had three Hank Aaron graded rookies out on
yeah,
on the case, and he was basically trying to, I think, do two things: decide which one he wanted, and then negotiate a deal for that. I didn't want to be nosy and just loiter around. I was legitimately looking, and when it was done, I moved on. It looked like they were going to make a deal, but that made me feel good seeing a young man who didn't grow up with Hank Aaron. Obviously, we all hear about him. He's a baseball legend,
yeah.
Americana. But it's nice to see that age group appreciate
Appreciating that.
the
Yeah,
history of the sport and the cards, and I think we're seeing more of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, so definitely. So in the if you went to a card show in like 1990, it would be like all kids, or not all kids, but there would be a lot of kids running around. I remember when I got back into the hobby in 2010, I would have been, in my early 30s. Um, I was the youngest person at any card show. There was no kids, zero, like no kids, no young people. It was an old man's thing. I was the young at 30, in my 30s. I was the super young kid. Um, and now, if you go to a show, there's like teenagers all over the place. There's parents with their kids, so that's a very, very promising thing, because it's definitely concerning when you're thinking like there's nobody in this hobby who's young. Like that's the future of the hobby is going to really struggle here. But now you see it all over the place. The last show I was at was a local show down here in Maryland, and yeah, there was like dozens of teenagers came up to me to sell cards or trade stuff, and they're all it's not, I wouldn't say it's a young person's hobby at the moment, but there's plenty of young people involved. And I agree with you. There's nothing I love more than when a young person wants a vintage card. I don't know. That just is cool to me.
Yeah, it warms my heart,
Yeah,
the
yeah, exactly.
sentimental me.
Oh yes.
And I'm a believer. Like I had a debate with someone. I won't mention who they are because they're kind of known in the hobby. And basically, his take, Chris, was, I'm a big kids in the hobby guy. Like it's a play. If I was if hobby was full of politicians and I was running for a seat, one of my platforms would be kids in the hobby. How important it is.
Yeah.
You can never have too much. We always need more. And this gentleman said, "John, I love you," and he was very respectful. I love you, but you're wrong with your kids in the hobby take. While they're great, I don't have a problem with them. We don't necessarily need them. Like you can get in the hobby at age 25 or 30 or whatever age. Like it's not. But my take is the hobby's going to be more successful the younger the people that are enjoying it are, because they're going to be in it longer. If you're looking at chronological and timeline, you're going to be in it longer, hopefully or mostly. And I don't know. I just think I was 7 when I started. There's something organic about that, right? Look how many people, while we were already in it when COVID hit, how many stories you hear them, I hear them, like, hey, I was bored. I remembered collecting cards as a kid, and I went back and I got back in again. And that's great too, right? But they reminisced about the nostalgic of collecting cards as a kid, and now they're back as a young adult or even an older adult. And I think there's something to be said about that. And so I think kids, I can't really be talked off that ledge. I think kids in the hobby is important. And while you can get in at any age, I think the more younger people we have, the better off the future is.
I don't even see the argument against that. Like uh every I mean, yeah, what you said, both of us, we're doing this because we collected cards as kids. I mean, yeah, of course you can always enter at any age, and I'm sure there are people who do, but I would say the vast majority collected as kids. They have a memory of that, and they're now doing it because they loved it doing it as kids. I think that's the foundation for all of this. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
I
they're
don't.
arguing. I'll defend them because they're actually a great person in the hobby. Great. I think their argument was that the success of the hobby doesn't solely lie on just kids. I think that was their kind of
Maybe
take.
maybe not the present day
Yeah,
success, but
yeah,
I would say the future success certainly does.
yeah. I agree with you. We're friends, so we didn't let it get to terms where there was just a friendly debate
Yeah.
where we just agreed to sort of disagree. And you know, but again, I'm like you. As a kid of the hobby, who's still a kid, just a 51-year-old kid now. It's still I'm you know seeing my son kind of collect even as a kid. I just sort of instilled in me that we can't take that for granted. And while you can get into it at any age, I think you appreciate it more when you get in it as a kid. You know, when I started at 7, and I'm probably going to speak for you here too, Chris. I didn't care about the values, right? I just wanted Reggie or Thurman Munson, or I wanted Yankees, or I wanted Mets cards. Like, I don't want to say I didn't care about the value, but that wasn't at the forefront.
Yeah.
It was just the cards, my favorite players, my favorite teams. My buddies wanted the gum, so I would trade the gum and get their cards and just amass more cards, and then just drank soda to get the cavities they were getting from my gum. So we all got cavities together, but you know, so those memories and that nostalgia, right? That's where it comes from. But I think there is an importance there that I think to me, if you start as a kid, you're more likely to stay in it or even come back than if you start later. I think it's easier to get out. And again, teach their own. You don't hold anyone hostage in the hobby, but I think it's easier. I think people who are in it for the long haul, probably 80-90% of them, if you ask them, started as a kid. It's a smaller percentage that didn't. And
I
so
think
that's
so.
kind of, yeah, that's where I kind of come from on that. You know, one of the things with being a dealer, I'm a pricer. Everything's priced. Um, I've always been that way. I'm a kind of a shy guy myself, believe it or not. So if I'm a consumer at a show and I'm at a table where the dealer doesn't price stuff, unless I really, really, really need that card, I tend not to ask and just go to the next table and try to find it there. I'm not saying that anyone that doesn't price cards is necessarily overpriced, but what's your strategy? Are you a pricer, and why? I guess if you are or aren't.
Man, yeah, you and I really line up on a lot of things. If 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 a table has no prices, I just walk right past it. I'm sure that I know obviously there's dealers who do that and are successful, so good for them, but that's not interested. I'm not interested in having to start the conversation by asking what the price is. So I'll just move on. I would say that um and maybe there are dealers that do it successfully, but I would say if you don't price your stuff, you're missing out on a lot of potential customers because there are a lot of customers like me and you who just aren't going to bother. Um, so yeah, I always price my stuff. Yeah,
So I have a dealer friend of mine who does it.
yeah.
He's a non-pricer. His prices are actually very reasonable. I know him. I know, but his argument is this, Chris, is he says I have so much stuff, Chad, and the way comps change, I don't have time. I'm just saving a bunch of time. Um, not having to reprice or going back
No, that's
and
fair.
putting a price sticker. But my argument back to him is what we just talked about. As I said, I think 70 or 80, whatever percentage you want to put, a high percentage of people won't ask. And so you're sort of eliminating them as
Yes.
potential customers. I'd rather be a little bit over comps on a sticker price and have someone tell me that and then come down and work with them and say, you're right. I just looked it up. I just have so much stuff. You miss stuff. And let's talk about, making a deal. I'll honor comps and all that good stuff. Um, but his argument is sometimes the swings are so big that you might be way over it. Then you're definitely not going to make a sale. So it's what's your what's your strategy with that? We've seen stuff swing or come down more than necessarily go up. Um, what's your take on his take that hey I sort of look at it as kind of the lazy way out. I don't price anything, so I can just worry about it. The other thing I don't know about you, I don't always like pulling out my phone all the time to check. If like nothing was
Oh yeah.
priced, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want to
definitely.
have my phone out constantly to look that up. I rather and you do this long enough. You've done it long enough. I've done it a long time. You tend to know who's moving, going down, going up. You can rifle through your inventory and kind of focus on those cards and reprice them, whether that's up or down. either way. I tend to do that. Kind of what's your take with my buddy's argument that there's so many price swings that it's just easier to leave them unlabeled and then deal with people who ask.
I mean, that's a fair point. I would counter with basically what we've been saying. Like, you're missing out on a lot of customers. So maybe find maybe price one case worth of stuff or something, just so you have some prices, and then you can have a box of unpriced stuff. I don't know. I think many customers are just going to walk by and not look. So I don't know if that's worth the trade off. I would guess it's not, but maybe it is. Um, for me, when I sell at a show, I don't really price stuff that I don't really have stuff at a show that's gonna swing in value much. I have like dollar boxes, $2 boxes that have vintage. So I don't really have to worry about that too much. If I have like modern cards that I sell that have potential big swings, I will price really high and then lower them over time to the point where they'll sell properly. So I don't really have to worry about big swings. It's very rare where I end up with a card that's like wildly priced wrong.
Yeah, I'm a pricer. No one can convince me. I've done that from even that first show at age 15. All my stuff was priced.
Yeah.
I tell the story. I didn't have a lot of bedside manner, Chris, so I literally would just sit there.
Yeah.
And to the point, I remember, I've told the story at the show, so I apologize to those who've heard it before. A gentleman came up, this is 1987, and wanted a card. And he's like, hey, I'm interested in this card. I want to see if your dad could do better. Do you know when he's coming back? And I'm like, this is my stuff. And he was shocked, because I was a young looking
That's
15
funny.
too.
Yeah,
So, but I didn't, I wasn't like, hey, how are you doing
yeah,
today? Or is there something? I didn't have that bedside manner at the time. I have it now after many moons of practice. But when I was a shy kid, so
yeah,
it was just like, if someone wanted something, they'd pick it out. I would deal with someone, but they'd have to initiate the conversation. I was
sure.
very poor, a very poor salesman in the early going, and fortunate I did all right. I just had enough inventory that people wanted, and I still was successful. That wouldn't work today.
Yeah,
That kind of bedside manner wouldn't work today with more dealers and more more opportunities to buy from someone who might be a little more personable and outgoing, which I've obviously become through the years. I got a segment we do sometimes with the guests, not all the guests, is what I call the hobby magic wand. I hand it to you. Obviously, it's a fictitious item. Too bad it really didn't exist, but it doesn't. But for the show, it does. So I hand you this hobby magic wand. You get one wish, hobby related. What is it? It could be for a Holy Grail card. I don't like this aspect of the hobby. I want to fix it. It's your wand. You can do whatever you want with it. What does Chris Sewell use it for?
so I can do anything.
Anything. But you only get one. You can't wish for three more wishes and then
Well, can I like have all the 52 manuals in my possession? Is that
yeah, that's your wish. There you go.
okay? Yeah, I'll do that. No, I mean, well, there's a lot. There's a lot you could go with here. Like we already talked about the kids. I would love to see more kids. I would love to see it back to the '90s when like all kids did it. I mean, when I was a kid, literally like every boy at my school collected cars. It wasn't like a few of us. It was like every single one. They all trade on the bus, and I'd like to see get back to that on some level. Um, I would like to see dealers who take advantage of people get out of the hobby. I think that makes my life harder because a lot of people are skeptical of dealers, and at times rightfully so. So I guess those would be a couple of mine. What would yours be?
Well, I like the last one you said. I think sometimes as dealers, we sort of get lumped in with everything. It's
Yeah,
like same
yeah,
thing
right.
with breakers, right? We see a bad breaker who doesn't send a card or take something off screen, and we just sort of oh, all breakers are crap, right?
Yeah, right, or
And I
crook.
think sometimes with dealers too, right? Oh, they're all over, he's so overpriced. They're all trying to gouge everyone. We just sort of you throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to
Yeah,
speak. So when when you said that, I was nodding my head because I think that does happen. And it's like unfortunate that you're sort of just kind of grouped with the bad apples of your group. You're automatically sort of guilty by association. You may not even, and in many cases, we don't even know that person.
yeah,
Yet we're sort of aligned with them because we do the same thing, right? We set up at shows so that they're all like that,
right.
they're all like that line. And so I agree with you. I've already said I'm a big kids in the hobby. I've never really asked myself that. I guess one of the things I gravitate to people who are passionate and genuine. I would just like if the wand existed for real, I would just make it where everyone was that from a selfish point of view, and I think most people are. I just make it 100%
Yeah,
across the board. Um, Although I'm thinking about I could have every Jackie Robinson Leaf rookie. That doesn't sound too bad now that I think about it. But
yeah, that would
so
be pretty good too.
but unfortunately, it's not a real item as of yet. I'm working on it. I got a
The
few more
wand.
tweaks. Yeah, I
Yeah,
got a few more tweaks to work out, and you know, uh, I think overall, a lot of times we hear the bad stories, but I think you'll agree. I think 90%, probably even higher than that, are good people doing good things. It's just that single digit percentage that kind of ruins it. I don't want to say ruins it, but puts a negative connotation on the people doing it above board in the right way. And that's unfortunate. It kind of comes with the territory. The only thing we can do, Chris, is just keep doing what we do. And people who really know us or get to know us, they'll see. And that's all I guess you can ask for. And if someone want to just kind of paint with a broad brush that everyone's like that. That's their shallowness, if you will. You hope it doesn't happen, but it's not a new concept, so it is what it is. But
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
long
Very
as,
good point. Yeah,
long
very.
as, long as you're having fun, whether it's I have fun on both sides of the table. One of the things one last question too, and then we'll kind of close it out is sometimes even when buying stuff, I've gotten better at this. The younger version of me was worse at it. I've gotten better in my older ages. But in buying, whether it be collection or some cards, is I'm going to keep that. I'm going to that's not going to make it into my show inventory. I
Yeah,
used to do a lot more of that than I do today. I still do it, just on a very lesser scale. Do you ever run into that difficulty? Like, I want to buy this, but I'm not going to resell it. I'm going to keep it. Or are you disciplined? Like I've gotten a little bit better. You ever run in like
yeah.
how's that for you?
No, when sometimes, but I'm very disciplined. And I have the way I explain it, the way I try to describe it is like for me, dealing is the same as exact same as collecting. I just don't need to keep the cards. Everything is the same. I get to buy cards. I get to play with cards. I get to grade cards. I get to look up cards. I get to sort cards. I get to do all the fun things I love about collecting. I just don't need to keep the card. So uh, uh, I've gotten to the mentality where that's the case, and so I very rarely, that very rarely is a problem. But if there's a card that is truly unique, and I'm like, wow, I've never seen that, or I really want to own it, but it's not like a PC card, I'll probably buy it and then just like keep it for a few months, and then okay, I've now owned it for a little while, now I'll sell it. And just sort of to like extend the collecting aspect a little bit, we'll say.
Yeah, I'm probably along the same lines. I remember working in that store with Rudy, um, and I remember you even telling me like, we love cards, right, John? But don't get too attached, right? If there's always a potential replacement, there's no shortage of you can pivot and get into something else that you enjoy too card wise. So
Yeah.
I've had other dealers who don't keep anything, and their mantra is everything has a price. Even if I had a PC, if someone offered me a crazy price, I'd sell it. So, he's even his take to me is you might have stuff at home, John, but if I just wrote you a blank check, you'd sell it to me. So like even that's available technically, you just don't have it here. So I just don't bring it. There's stuff I don't bring to the show.
Yeah, of
Some
course.
of it's behind me. That I just so I don't get tempted to sell it. So that's I guess that's where my discipline comes in. But it's fun, right? It's fun to have to make those decisions. And like you said, you keep it a little bit like, hey, it's time to move on. Someone else will enjoy it, and I'll get something else and enjoy that as well. And there's obviously nothing wrong with that. That's
Yeah.
the fun, and I've done that now for 40 something years. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
I always give the guests the last word, Chris, where people can find your great show twice a week, as you said. Anything else you want to throw out there? If the contact you, if they're selling to collect, whatever you want to share, take your time.
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
Well, first, thank you for having me on your show. Sorry we missed each other. Yeah. John flew into Baltimore, and it was exactly the 4 days when I was going to Toronto. So
Chris
we
heard that was coming, and he's like, "Hey,
I
I
was like,
gotta
I'm out
get
of
out
here.
of here. I'm leaving. I'm not even leaving the state. I'm leaving the country with this guy."
He literally
Coming.
like arrived on a Thursday, and I was flying out Thursday, and then I came back
That's
Sunday
funny.
night, and he was flying out Sunday night. It was literally so we didn't get to grab lunch or anything, but
Yeah, well, I'm planning on making. Not to cut you off, Chris. I'm planning to make that like a yearly kind of
yeah,
trip around that week and catch an Oriole game, and definitely, hopefully, next year we can all me, you, Danny, whoever else,
yeah,
grab some lunch, maybe catch a ball game, whatever the case may be. But
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, that was
That's funny.
so sorry we didn't get that. Yeah, but we'll do that. We'll do that next year, I guess, or at the national or something if you're there. And yeah, thanks for coming on my channel and facing off against Moynihan.
It was a close game. I lost. I don't know if I'm
It was
like
a nail
ruining.
biter. It was a nail biter.
Yeah,
Um,
I lost, but listen, Moynihan knows his stuff. It's not
yeah,
like so
you
it's like
didn't lose
losing
to a
to a
schmo.
it's like losing to a Jeopardy champion. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I'm all right with that.
that's it.
I'm all right with that.
But my channel is Baseball Card Collector Investor Dealer. It's a long title. I kind of wish I had created a smaller title 4 years ago, just to been easier to see. But yeah, all my contacts there. If you're interested in watching or want to reach out about a collection, my email's there, and I have a website, collectorinvestordealer.com too.
There you go. And great channel, great content from a guy who loves the hobby. You just have to watch one episode that becomes shining through. I gravitate to people like that because if I may be so bold, I feel like I check those boxes too. And like we talked
Yeah,
about, I think we tend to gravitate to people who have similar interest in the way they collect or deal or whatever the case may be. So uh, keep doing. It might have been by accident, but you hit on something and you're doing well, and people like myself enjoy it. And so you don't need me to tell you this, but keep up the great work and look forward to what's around the corner. You're doing game shows now. Maybe you replace Ken Jennings on Jeopardy.
yeah,
Who knows? Who
yeah.
knows? Maybe we have to do a baseball Jeopardy
Gonna get
as
ESPN.
well.
Gonna get ESPN 8 the Ocho to host the next tournament.
There you go. Well,
Yeah,
Chris, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I appreciate you coming on. Love to have you back down the line as well.
yeah,
Yes, I'll be at the National, so we'll have to make up for Baltimore in Cleveland, and then
yeah.
we'll do Baltimore again next year. So always
Sounds
fun.
great, man. Yeah, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.